was thinking about the topic. I was reminiscing back a few years ago when I came to Ananda, and soon after that, I decided to serve with Ananda full time. And many of my friends and family members, as you can very well imagine, thought I was crazy, and some of them still do. And but somewhere I had the conviction that I will be taken care of, and even devotees on the path who were supposedly concerned about me, and I'm sure they meant well, but they always told me, why don't you work for a few years, earn some money, save some, and then decide to do all this. And I would say, I think Master will take care of me. And then the reply would come, yes, but we have to be practical. And at that point, I couldn't say anything, and I was a fairly new devotee, newer than I am now, and I just had to leave that conversation. But a few years later, an experience really opened my eyes. I met some of my friends from school and college, and we were having lunch together. And again, there's nothing much that I feel in common with them, given my life choices, and nothing much that I can talk to them about. And as I sat there, I realized that all that they could think about was how much their salary is and how they can get a better degree, which can eventually lead to a better job. And all this while, I thought, in the whole group, perhaps everyone earns twice, thrice, four times more than me. And all they could think about was how they can get more and how they can get a discount on the restaurant bill that was about to come, and frantically searching in all these apps to get the best discount. And I thought, now let's look at it. A few years ago, two kinds of people, let's say a devotee and someone else, made a certain choice. The devotee says, I will place God first, and I have faith that I will be taken care of. And somehow things work out. You don't always know how they will, but in the moment they do. And then there are the so-called materialists, not because they are bad, but because they choose the material comforts of the world first and keep God and give God the second place. And so how does it turn out for them? Well, things never really turn out to be well, and there is always something that could be fixed, something more that could be achieved, something more that the heart is still yearning after, and it never really works, or it works for a while, and then it begins to disintegrate. And Yogananda ji used to say that Maya can only ever keep one promise, and that is that it never keeps its promises. And so time and time again, Swami Kriyananda has said, as he has observed the life of thousands of devotees, he said that all those who think first of getting for themselves find later that things never really seem to work out. But those who come with the attitude of giving and serving God find that they are somehow taken care of. And he said, in the world, people take great pains to get good jobs, save money, invest wisely, and then perhaps they get fired or use up all their money on medical bills or lose it to thieves. The truth is, there is no security in the world, nor for that matter is there any security at Ananda. Ananda will continue to thrive, I expect so. But on what facts do I base this expectation? None. God alone is the only answer. And when people would ask Yogananda ji about the organization he founded, someone once asked him, what are the assets of this organization? And he said, none, only God. And faith is sometimes thought of, a mere sentiment, something that is reserved for the moment when nothing else is working, when you have tried your best and now you have lost all control. And in that sense, many people think of devotees as being weak, as not putting out the energy and just hoping for things to work out. True faith, in fact, is the awareness of God's presence within. And when we as devotees feel that God is with us, in every moment. And the more that our awareness deepens, we naturally feel provided and cared for, isn't it? We have all experienced this as our spiritual journey has blossomed, that once we feel God's presence in our hearts, there is the doubts that God will take care of us begin to diminish slowly. You know, while we are talking about faith, it's also important that we do our best, as we prayed before the satsang, through our self-effort and through that divine grace. So faith is not something which you attract just by not putting out any energy. Swamiji talks about the early days of Ananda when he had acquired the land which is now the Ananda village. And he said many devotees at that time would tell him that, oh, don't worry about all these bills that you have to pay. Where is your faith in God? God will provide for us. And at the same time, Swamiji was perhaps one of the only ones who had to go out into the city and teach hundreds and hundreds of classes to gather the money to pay off the land. And he said, at the same meanwhile, all those devotees who were reprimanding Swamiji for having more faith were down swimming in the river and just enjoying and feeling God's presence and trying to relax. And when Swamiji actually earned all the money to pay for the land, these devotees said, see, God provided for us. So, faith works. Faith is something that we attract by the energy that we put out. And the stronger the faith becomes, the stronger, you can say, the miracles also become. I was reading the story of Saint Francis, and Saint Francis and one of his brothers, Brother Elias, they were organizing a gathering of hundreds of monks from different parts of the world. And they were all coming together, I think more than hundreds, thousands. And these monks, if you're familiar with Saint Francis, had taken vows of poverty and obedience and chastity. And so they would usually sustain themselves by begging and asking for providence from other people. And so Brother Elias told Saint Francis, he said, Francis, I think you have called all these people, but you have not made any arrangements to provide for them. And thousands of monks cannot go out begging out into the city. So we should do something, or we should cancel this gathering. You have really overstepped the limits of what we can achieve here. And Saint Francis, because he knew that God will somehow take care of him, he did his best, but after a certain point, his faith was strong enough that it attracted the blessing. And what happened was that all the townspeople who loved Saint Francis knew that this gathering was happening, and they all simply brought food for all the monks that were coming. And so if you see in the story, when we don't have any faith, like Brother Elias, or I should say, we all have our moments of doubt and weakness, that leads to tension and anxiety. And when we have that faith strong enough, we can suddenly relax, knowing that things will work out somehow. I was talking to one of my friends, he's not here in the temple today, and we were talking about how joyful this path is and how much satisfaction and inner security we feel with our meditation techniques, and we feel closer to God. And we were talking about all the world events that are happening, and the politicians and this and that. And at some point, we just looked at each other and said, what's the worst thing that can happen? We'll die. So what? So what? God is with us, right? And when we reach that point, really there's no reason to worry, to fear, to be anxious. Because even if the worst of the worst things happen, no one and nothing can take away that faith that we have nurtured in our hearts. And how do we develop that faith? That has to be a daily experiment, a daily activity that we do. That is the difference between faith and belief. People used to believe that the world was flat. It did not make it so. So faith is belief when you experiment with belief, when you put it into practice, and when it becomes your own personal experience, then it turns into faith. Because then no one can deny it, right? If you have felt God's presence, I can tell you every argument that says God doesn't exist, but you wouldn't budge. Because you have that personal experience. So to develop that experience, we need to practice being with God throughout the day, to talk to God, to share every thought with Him. It's very, very important. Apart from all the outward activities we do, that we serve, unless we have this inner awareness of God, our faith will always be very shaky. Ramakrishna told one of his disciple had traveled to England and had came back to India. This was before independence. And he was sharing with Ramakrishna about all the places that he had visited. And Ramakrishna told his disciple, he said in Bengali, Jagat jude tumi amar maa ke dekho ni? So he said, you have roamed the whole world, but haven't you seen my mother? And so we have to see the mother right here, right now, and feel that God and Gurus and Divine Mother are always traveling with us. And that is your key to developing inner freedom, faith, security, because nothing else in the world can really give it to us. I like to end by sharing the words of one of the songs Swamiji wrote in his oratorio on the life of Christ. Maybe we can all close our eyes and listen. It's very short. He who clothes the fields with lilies, he who feeds the birds on the air, he who floods the hills with sunshine, he whose love all creatures share. Will he not clothe us? Will he not feed us? Are we like them, not his own? Fill your chalice at his fountain. Know that you live not alone. Know that you live not alone. Om.
One of the most famous quotes of Jesus Christ, and one that Yogananda quoted a lot, and Swami quoted a lot, and we quote a lot, is, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you." And the Master was basically reminding us that our life is in God's hands. And in case we forgot that our life was in God's hands, of course, we couldn't take a breath without God wanting us to breathe. But we seem to, get into delusion and think, I have some control over all of this. And there are things we need to do in this world, of course, to take care of our families and our business and schooling and things that need to happen. But in the end, if we don't put our lives in God's hands first, then everything we do can just fall apart. But if He arranges it, it's most likely not going to fall apart. When you think of these marionette puppets, the marionette puppets, if you pull it up by the wrong string, it just will never work out. But if you pull it up from the right string at the top, then the puppet looks completely together. So it's kind of like that for us. If we put our faith in God, then we allow Him to pull us up by the right string and let everything sort of shake down and work out the way it needs to work out. In the Autobiography of a Yogi, there's the story that Yogananda tells us of Ananda challenging his spiritual beliefs versus worldly concerns, and he gives him a challenge to go to Vrindavan with no money. He has to eat, he has to come back on the train with no money, but he can't beg and he can't ask anybody for anything. And of course, through that story, which I hope you have all read, miracles happen, and they have the meal with the Maharaja, and people are just giving them train tickets on the way back. And Ananta, his very doubting older brother, says, the law of supply and demand reaches more subtle realms than I had imagined. And so I think for all of us, we have to know that there is no realm in which God cannot penetrate our lives. It's impossible to be outside the presence of God. And and Arjuna, of course, the most faithful devotee, has a choice between the entire army of Krishna and just Krishna himself, who will not fight. And who does he choose? He chooses God, who will take the reins of the battle, and drive the chariot. So like Krishna, like our avatar, like our Lord Krishna, it's just like give the reins to God because victory is assured. Who knows what will happen in between, but victory is assured. It always looks like the bad guy's going to win. But who wins in the end? If we're with God, yato dharma tata jaya. And Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Gita, those who worship lesser gods go to those gods. Those who worship me come to me. And even though he was probably talking about the astral world and after these soldiers lose their bodies, actually we're just talking about, divine realities, wanting to be close to divine realities or worldly concerns. There's a story at Dakshineshwar in Kolkata that one of Ramakrishna's disciples, who was also one of the main sponsors of Dakshineshwar, Rani Rashmani, she was in front of the goddess Kali, Divine Mother Kali, but while she was in front of Kali, she was thinking about a lawsuit that she was in the middle of. And Ramakrishna was with her, read her thoughts, and slapped her on the face. The temple officials were horrified. They said, fire him. And Rani Rashmani said, no. He knew what I was thinking. I should have only been thinking of God, and I was thinking about money concerns. And so he woke me up to my air and helped me. So we can ask ourselves, what are we thinking about? What's running in the background of our mind? Hopefully we're thinking about this morning's meditation. I felt that peace. I felt that inner joy, just that contentment. And then let me take it out into my day. Or in our mind, we can be thinking about name and fame and what is our net worth today? Or wait a minute, what is it at this moment? And we can keep looking at those apps and we can, just constantly thinking, how is this worldly situation going to benefit me and mine? So those are the things. But again, if we have that faith and we can live with that divine reality of the presence of God from our meditation into our daily life, that is super magnetic. That is the highest consciousness, the highest awareness that will draw the things to us that we need. That is how, if we seek God, everything will come unto us that we need. Because it's magnetism. The higher the thought, the higher the consciousness, the more that consciousness affects energy, and the more that energy will manifest on the material plane. Consciousness, energy, matter. That is the way this creation is manifested by the Lord, and he can manifest whatever he wants. So as long as we're reaching with him on that highest level of consciousness, then energy will follow. Our thoughts, our feelings, our decisions, our actions can all follow suit from that highest consciousness. And then our life begins to flow. We have these currents of energy. God can take us back to him, or Maya can bring us deeper and deeper and deeper into her. And so we always have that choice, but we want to step into the current that's going to take us back to God. And we all have experiences of that, experiences of miracles of Ananda. Yogananda seeing a vision, decides to go to America like overnight and start a work. Swami Kriyananda reads Autobiography of a Yogi, crosses the country, becomes Yogananda's disciple, and then in the end creates Ananda to share those teachings also all over the world. And Keshava and I have been practicing these principles. And like Shivendra, my friends and family certainly thought I was out of my mind. But we had that faith of our own experience, and we've been able to live those principles in our lives. And lo and behold, our families are taken care of. This ashram manifested for us. These great souls that help us keep everything moving and attracting all of you and teaching all of you. And then all of you great souls who come and support Yogananda's work. All of this was magnetized by putting faith first. by putting God first and saying, yes, God alone, God alone. And Swami Kriyananda, let's say, in creating all of Ananda, writing 150 books, 400 pieces of music, creating all these communities, schools, on, just the list goes on very, very long. He always said, I never did anything. It was God that did it. It was the Guru that did it. And what attracted him like that? I mean, obviously the vibration of his Guru, but also the power of the teachings that these masters have incarnated to teach us. And what is that? That there is a purpose to our lives, that there is a goal to this life. And what is that goal? That goal is bliss. That goal is returning to Satchidananda. And it is not unattainable. It is attainable. And how is it attainable? Step by step. Let me show you the path, step by step. And it's a very practical, simple path. We just need to persevere and walk it. Kriya Yoga will still our minds, reverse that energy flow from all the desires and attachments outside that keep us incarnating again and again and again. And pull us inside and allow us to achieve the goal. And even if we don't reach moksha in this lifetime, we are getting closer and closer and closer. And it is the only goal that will give us lasting fulfillment, is that soul awareness of that it is divine and that it can live in the presence of the divine. And that is the goal of life. And we can live that every single day. And no other goal is worth it. But then there's no mistakes. If we follow the worldly goal, it's okay. We'll win them, we'll achieve them, and we'll have that satisfaction temporarily. And then we'll say, what else? What else? What's the real purpose of my life? And we can just keep doing it again and again. But it takes very, very, very good karma to want to know God. And everybody in this temple really wants to know God. And so we are the lucky ones. We are the very blessed ones. So let us take that awareness that we receive in meditation into our daily life, because that is how we handle our responsibilities and our duties, is that we offer the energy that's flowing through us into our jobs, into our responsibilities, into everything that is required of us in this world. And we make it divine by what is flowing through us. And so it's up to us. What are we thinking about? Where is our consciousness? What is the energy that I'm drawing to flow through me? And can I offer that energy into every moment of my life so I may be transformed by that which is flowing through me, and that I can help transform the world around me? With great faith, we can do that. Joy to you.